Good evening, councillors, members of staff and members of the public. Welcome. Please be upstanding for Her Worship Mayor Karen Vernon.
Good evening, everyone. It is 6:04 p.m. and I'll declare this special council meeting of the town of Victoria Park is open. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners. Nunjarapan Wajak Noongar, Budja Yakin Nidja Bilya Barduk. I am honoured to be standing on Wajak Noongar country on the banks of the Swan River. Nan Kadach Noongar Mort Ken Kadak Nidja Wajak Noongar Budja. Nan Kadach Nidja Noongar Brudia Kora Yie Border Balapan Mordich Noongar Kadajan Mort We Budja Yeye. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land which continues to be important today. Nanyunka Balapan Noongar Brudia We Mort Nidja Budja. I thank them for their contribution to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region. Please be seated. Item 2 on the agenda tonight is announcements from the presiding member. 2.1, recording and live streaming of proceedings. In accordance with Regulation 14I of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, this meeting is being audio and video recorded and live streamed on the town's website. Under Clause 39, subsection 1 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, I do not give my permission for any other person to record the proceedings of this meeting. By being present at the meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image and voice may be live streamed to the public. Recordings of this meeting will also be available on the town's website following the meeting. 2.2, public question time and public statement time. As this is a special council meeting, any public questions or statements must relate to the business of the agenda. There are guidelines that need to be adhered to in our council meetings, and during question and statement time, people speaking are not to personalise any questions or statements about elected members or staff or use any possible defamatory remarks. In accordance with Clause 40 of the Town's Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, a person addressing the Council shall extend due courtesy and respect to the Council and the processes under which it operates, and shall comply with any direction by the presiding member. A person present at or observing a meeting shall not create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings, whether by expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. When any person speaks during public question time or public statement time, any person who is then speaking is to immediately stop, and every person present is to preserve strict silence so that the presiding member may be heard without interruption. As per the usual practice that we have adopted for these meetings, there is a limit of 3 questions per person and 2 minutes assigned for the making of statements in relation to items on the agenda. If, however, there are very few questions or very few statements, we can be more generous with those time limits, but they are designed to ensure that all those who wish to ask questions or make statements are given a fair and equal opportunity to do so. 2.3, no adverse reflection. In accordance with Clause 56 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law, both elected members and the public, when speaking, are not to reflect adversely on the character or actions of elected members or employees. Now, I also need to make a separate announcement in relation to the attendance at this meeting by one of our elected members, Councillor Daniel Minson, to attend this meeting by electronic means. In accordance with Regulation 14C, subsection 2, subparagraph B of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, I authorise Councillor Daniel Minson to attend this special council meeting on 25 March 2025 at 6 p.m. by electronic means, namely MS Teams, on the basis that I am satisfied that he will be in a location suitable for participating in the meeting electronically, as required by Regulation 14C subsection 5. In accordance with Regulation 14CA subsection 5, I confirm that Councillor Minson has made the necessary declaration that he can maintain confidentiality if this meeting is required to go behind closed doors during any confidential session. So, on that basis, welcome Councillor Minson. Can you hear us all right? All right, thank you. That's a thumbs up. Item 3 on the agenda is attendance. We have all elected members in attendance. We also have a number of members of the town's executive, management and staff, led by the CEO, Mr Carl Askew. Item 3.1 is apologies. There are nil. Item 3.2, approve leave of absence. There is nil. Item 4 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Mr CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Yes, we have a number. Item 9.1, Councillor Anderson, impartiality interest. She is a member of the Hockey Working Group. Item 9.1, Councillor Crozer, an impartiality interest. She has discussed this item with residents in the area near the location. Item 9.1, Mr Cruikshank, an impartiality interest. He has attended the hockey stadium as both a spectator to watch his children play or train. And yourself, Mayor Vernon, item 9.1, impartiality. I've had meetings with Victoria Park Xavier Hockey Club about their request for an upgrade of their facilities since 2018 and about their views about this redevelopment project. You've also attended events hosted by the Victoria Park Xavier Hockey Club, and you are a member of the town's Hockey Working Group where this DA has been discussed. Item 10.1, Councillor Crozer, an impartiality interest. Members of the community have expressed their feelings about the future of this project to me. Again, item 10.1, Councillor Miles, an impartiality interest. I have been to an event hosted by Perth Football Club at the current building. Item 10.1, Councillor Minson, impartiality. I have met with members of Perth Football Club regarding the proposed redevelopment. And yourself, Mayor Vernon, item 10.1, impartiality. I have been engaged in advocacy for the town for external funding for this project since 2019, and I have had meetings with the Perth Football Club since 2019 about their request for an upgrade to their facilities. I have also attended events held by the Perth Football Club. Item 10.1, Councillor Devereux, impartiality. I have attended events at Lathlane Park and have been on the Lathlane Advisory Committee. And item 11.1, Councillor Crozer, impartiality. I have discussed this item with members of the community and yourself, Mayor Vernon, item 11.1, impartiality. I have had communication with members of the community about these issues relating to traffic management in Carlisle for several years, including the subject matter of this motion.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Are there any elected members who have yet to make a declaration of interest they need to deal with? I'm going to go to Councillor Anderson first, then Councillor Hamer. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an impartiality for 10.1 as I have attended events at the Perth Football Club over the years and been invited and attended. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I'm also 9.1 for the Hockey Working Group member.
Any other declaration of interest? Councillor Devereux.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I've also sent through an impartiality for 11.1.
Councillor Crozer.
For item 9.1, I work at Curtin University, which is one of the stakeholders for this item.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? All right. Well, just a gentle reminder, as always, that if you do consider after this point in time, but before the items are coming up for debate, that you do have an interest that you need to declare, please make that known to me as soon as possible. Thank you. Item 5 is public question time, and I'll now open public question time at 6:13 p.m. and ask, are there any questions from members of the public? And they need to relate to either any of the 3 items on the agenda. No, it looks like a no. So on that basis, I will close public question time at 6:13 p.m. Now move to item 6 on the agenda, which is public statement time. I'll now open that at what is 6:14 p.m. I have the names of a number of people who would like to make a statement for tonight. So I'm just going to call those people up in the order in which their name is listed on my sheet. But if there are other people in the public gallery who would like to make a statement, I'll go to you as an open invitation after I've gone through these 3 individuals. So I'd like to invite Adrian Barrich to please come forward in relation to 10.1. You have a total of 2 minutes for your statement, but if it looks like you run short of time, please let me know that you still have more matters to deal with, because we may not have more than 3 statements, so we can be more generous with the timing. Whenever you're ready.
No.
Just press the button on the base pad. If it lights up red, you're working.
1, 2. I think I'd know, wouldn't you, working on television? That's going to get back. All right. Well, thank you, Mayor Vernon, councillors, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. At the Perth Footy Club, we've been thinking about how best to approach tonight's situation, and ultimately, after much discussion and a lot of agonising, we've come down to a simple question. If the town decides not to proceed tonight, would you consider handing the project over to the state government with all that entails? The project started in earnest 4 years ago, and we feel our best way forward would be that way. We're desperate to get this new community facility underway. As we have highlighted previously, the condition of our current facilities, particularly the change rooms, is putting a lot of pressure on our club and affecting the experience for everyone who comes to the ground. The ones who are feeling this most are our women's teams. 80 women are currently involved in our programs, and it's wonderful to see how dedicated and passionate they are despite the current facilities not being up to standard. As you may know, this year we launched our first ever senior women's team, which is a historic milestone for the club. So we're doing our best in a building that's over 60 years old. We're running 5 teams, 2 women, 3 men's, a youth football pathway drawing from young people from the city of Victoria Park. And the long delay is really stopping us providing the best environment. Every day that we move forward with this redevelopment, or don't move forward with this redevelopment, we're missing opportunities for young girls and women to chase their dreams, and we risk sending the message that women's football is not a priority. During our last meeting with the Deputy Premier, which was also attended by the Mayor and several of the senior officers, she made it clear that the state government is ready and willing to take over. So as the president of the Perth Footy Club, I have the responsibility to advocate for our young women. They've joined the club with big dreams, but without this new facility, we're unable to provide the opportunities that they deserve. So we're here tonight just advocating not only for our 80 women currently in our program, but for all the young girls who will join us in the future. That's probably all I need to say, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, and I'd like to hand over now for more of an insight to our Director of Women's Football, Michelle Burton, who might be able to shed some light on why this is such an important thing to the Perth Footy Club. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Barrich. I do understand that you are registered to request to do a deputation, which is item 7.3 on our agenda. I do also note there are 2 other members of the Perth Football Club who are listed to make statements. Was it your wish that everyone made a statement, or was it your intention to do a deputation when we get to 7.3 with you presenting? Because at the moment, as I say, I have 3 people listed to make a statement on behalf of the club, and then separately you're self-listed to do a deputation, which gives you up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. So I had understood it being conveyed to you in answer to your request to do a deputation, that would be referred to council. Council invariably always approves requests for deputations. So I'm in your hands as to how you'd like to deal with it. I don't want you to feel like you're cut off by the 2-minute limit for statements.
Oh, no, Madam Mayor, that was fantastic. That's all I needed. I wasn't sure exactly whether I was to go ahead then or later on, but it's basically myself and Michelle Burton that wanted to speak today, and that was it. So whenever that fitted in, or if you need me to go over that again, I will, but sounds like I might have done my bit. And
All right.
then whenever you want to use Michelle, you can.
Okay, well, we'll do it this way. We'll invite up Michelle Burton and Colin Lofts in due course if they wish to make their statements. But if more time is required, given that we had intended to approve you having a deputation, we can be more generous with the time frame. So let's move to Michelle, as you've suggested, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's great.
Hi, Mayor Vernon and councillors, thank you very much for having me here tonight. I've been part of the female football program since we started in 2021. We first introduced female footballers to our club then, and we had just a small development program as a way of just starting off, as we were the only club in the Waffle that didn't actually have a female football program. Since then, as a club, we've worked tirelessly to provide equal opportunities for our women, and we've increased our numbers. Not only the 80 women that Adrian mentioned before, we also have a development squad that comes in for part of the year. So we're giving opportunities to over 100 young girls and women in our area to play football at the moment, which has grown so much in the last 4 years. We've worked tirelessly to make sure that we culturally include the girls, and I guess we've done so much education of players, of coaches, of staff, our community groups and members. We've painted, old change rooms. We've put up doors on the showers so that, they can have some privacy. We've tried to do everything we can to make them feel as comfortable as possible. But despite those, tremendous strides and the sponsorship that we've been able to bring in, we still feel that we face a major challenge, and that is the inadequate change rooms and facilities. So if I can just share a couple of stories with you. On a typical Monday night, we have 160 people or players in our club. Of that now, it includes 40 women. As Adrian mentioned, we actually have a women's league team this year for the first time. And so as a result of that, they need to train more often at the club than our younger girls did. And so on a Monday night, as I said, we now have 5 teams trying to train at the club. And that means that our women share with men one gym, 2 change rooms. One of them is barely adequate, and so that's the one that the girls get, or they end up in a bar that we've put some blinds up in so that no one can see in the windows. We've got one education room that all the teams need to filter through after they come off the oval, and we have one medical room. I'm not sure if you know what happens in a medical room at a footy club, but that's where people get a rub down if they need it, they get treatment, they get strapping. So we've got all the girls and all the boys in this one room. So as you can imagine, there's not very much privacy. I guess what it's doing is it's putting our female players and also people at the club, so, the male players too, and staff and coaches, into compromising situations. Unfortunately, because the males have had run of the club, they know all the spaces and, in the past they've had full access. So it's been tricky, and it's been a lot of education by us to try and make sure that they don't walk into the room that's allocated for the girls to change in on a particular night. We recently had our inaugural, actually, presentation night for the women to get their jumpers at the club. And so they were at the club on a different night to when they normally were, which meant that we had to allocate them a room to get changed in. Unfortunately, it was the room that our Colts players usually use, and despite us explaining to them that they weren't supposed to be in there that night, they still walked in. Little bit of a difficult situation, having 16 to 18-year-old boys walking in on women getting changed. We also had feedback from parents that night that, the girls wanted to look nice for their presentation night, and the one mirror just didn't really cut it, especially that, had bad lighting. So the girls were outside, putting their makeup on, using their phones, and it might not sound like a big thing, but it's one of those things that just makes people feel comfortable if they can have access to proper facilities. The other issue we have is the restrooms. They were designed for men, and so as you can imagine, they're mainly urinals. So the girls have to walk past the urinals to get to the one cubicle. Now, on match day, you can imagine that can be quite difficult. There's a few nervous wheeze sometimes required, and sometimes the girls also need to use the facilities because, it might be that time of the month for them. I haven't spoken to her, but we also have a female Muslim player this year, and, I have noticed that she's very reluctant to get changed in the change rooms, and I don't blame her because there's no guarantee of privacy. It probably shows very little respect, from us for the, cultural practices required by her. This year, we've got fixtures that require our female league team to share change rooms with our male teams. So we have 5 games happening on one day, and we've got a reserves game followed by a female league game followed by a male league game. So I'm not really sure how that's going to work. We'll do the best we can, but as you can imagine, it's going to require some real juggling to get people in, changed, out on the field, back in for halftime addresses while other people are trying to get changed, and then also, changed at the end of the night. I guess I probably don't have to reinforce to any of you, given the roles that you're in, that, there's countless benefits of supporting women in sport. But if we can't do it the same way that we support men who've had generations and years of, having facilities set up for them, then it makes it really, really difficult to make them feel like they're equal partners at our football club. And so I guess I'm just here to say that, at the moment, I feel like we're letting them down and, we're not really providing the environment that they need to be able to thrive and feel part of our football club and part of our community. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next on the list, Colin Loss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't need to speak. The President has said what we need to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Were there any other members of the public who wish to make a statement? No? All right. In that case, I'll close public statement time at 6:26 p.m. Item 7 is presentations. 7.1 is petitions. There are none. 7.2 is presentations. There are none. 7.3, we did have registered request for a deputation, but am I right in understanding, Mr Barrett, that you don't wish to pursue your opportunity for a deputation now? No, is that correct? All right. Thank you. We'll then move on to item 8, which is method of dealing with agenda business.
Excuse me.
Yes, Councillor Cruiser.
My apologies. It's just that usually when a deputation is given, councillors, all of council are provided with opportunities to ask the people who gave the deputation questions, and it seems like the people who are here tonight were intending to give a deputation. Is there an opportunity for us to ask them questions, or does that not fit within the procedures?
No, the request was made for a deputation, and the person who made the request for the deputation has decided not to present it as a deputation. So there isn't an option on our agenda for members of the elected member council to ask questions of members of the public gallery. Item 8, method of dealing with agenda, there is none. Item 9 is Chief Community Planner reports. 9.1 is development application for Australian and State Hockey Centre, number 208, lot 1884, Kent Street, Bentley, Curtin University. The officer recommendation for this item is run from pages 10 through to 14 of the Special Council agenda. It's a very lengthy officer recommendation, so I don't plan to read it out at this point in time. Save to say that in relation to this particular matter, it is the recommendation of the officers that the development application or the recommendation of the Town of Victoria Park to the WA Planning Commission is that the application is supported subject to a significant number of conditions that are all set out on pages 10 through to 14. Can I seek a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation, please? Moved Councillor Hamer, seconded Councillor Anderson. Councillor Hamer, I'm going to go to you first. Do you wish to be heard at this stage as the mover of the motion?
Nothing from me, thanks, Mayor Vernon.
All right, thank you. Councillor Anderson, did you wish to be heard at this stage as the seconder?
Yes, I'd just like to make a brief statement, please.
Yes, by all means.
So while acknowledging that the Town of Victoria Park isn't the determining authority for this development application, I believe it's crucial that our community's interests are adequately represented, which has been clearly outlined in the recommendation contained in the report. One other element briefly mentioned in the report is ongoing discussions with Hockey WA, the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, with the town on how the new facility will accommodate local clubs and meet their needs. These discussions are vital for the ongoing success and sustainability of grassroots hockey in our community for generations to come. So for those who don't know much about the Victoria Park Xavier Hockey Club, it is one of Perth's largest hockey clubs. It has been working with the town for many years in fact, experiencing the highs, lows and challenges to find a location for synthetic turf for hockey. The club caters to players of all ages and abilities. Its membership spans from young children as early as 3 and 4 years to senior members actively playing in their 60s, exemplifying its commitment to inclusivity and lifelong sport. The club has been instrumental in developing athletes who have ascended to elite levels. Notably, Kari Somerville, a product of the club, has represented Australia on the international stage, including participation in the Olympics. Additionally, James Collins, who began his hockey journey with the club at the age of 5, has progressed through the ranks to represent the Kookaburras. And additionally, Australia's national men's hockey team, Victoria Park Xavier Hockey Club coaching staff also boasts distinguished figures like Greg Corbett, a former Olympian, who represented Australia at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. So I know that this information I've shared isn't a planning consideration. However, I share this to put a story behind the term stakeholder. Victoria Park Xavier Hockey Club and the investment they have, they're more than a stakeholder for the town. They are part of our community's fabric and a way for life for its members. An effective management plan isn't merely procedural. It's a demonstration that the club's needs and aspirations have been genuinely heard, understood and valued. This plan will reflect not only the collaborative efforts through the Hockey Working Group, but also more than a decade of dedicated advocacy from the club aimed at ensuring long-term sustainability, growth and contribution to our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Are there any questions related to this item? Deputy Mayor Ive.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I just have a question. It's referred to in the report, in the officer's report, and also in the planning report from the applicant about Aboriginal community engagement. There's reference made on page 30 of the planning report to the Mindera Advisory Committee's views on this project, specifically around dual naming, recognition of the Twin Dolphin Dreaming Trail, and engagement with Dr. Noel Nannup and Dr. Simon Forrest. And those paragraphs sound terrific in the report, but it actually doesn't give any conclusion as to what has occurred from those conversations and how they're going to be used. And I'm wondering if we could get some commentary on that, please.
Thank you. Direct that question to Mr. Cruikshank, Manager of Development Services.
Madam Mayor, I wasn't at the Mindera Advisory Group meeting that's referred to within the applicant's planning report, but as I understand it, the proposal, particularly the landscaping design and the landscape response, picked up on some of the themes and the feedback that we received from the Mindera Advisory Group. So I believe that the plan, as you have before you and is being asked to be approved, has taken into account some of the feedback that was received.
Deputy Mayor Ife.
Thank you. It might have been helpful if that was a little clearer in the report that there had been engagement with Dr. Nannup and Dr. Forrest, but thank you.
Are there any other questions for this item? No. In that case, I'm going to formally ask, is there any dissent? No. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move to item 10, which is the Chief Operations Officer reports. There's one item, which is 10.1. Lathlane Zone 1 Options Analysis and Request to Proceed with Stage 2 Works under Contract CTVP 2404. Deputy Mayor Ife, I understand you've given notice you wish to move an alternate motion.
Yes, Mayor Vernon, I have an alternate that I would like to move, if that's okay. The alternate is that Council 1 notes the funding shortfall for the Lathlane Precinct Zone 1 Community Sport and Recreation Facility project, which is currently indicatively estimated at $4.8 million. 2, resolves not to proceed with the second part of the construction contract between the town and PS Structures at this stage. 3, requests the Chief Executive Officer and the Mayor to undertake further advocacy to external stakeholders for additional funding to address the funding shortfall. And 4, requests the Chief Executive Officer to report back to Council by no later than July 2025 with an update on point 3 of this resolution and options for the future of this project, particularly related to option 6 as outlined in this report. And my reason for this alternate is that Council was not willing to accept the risk of funding a shortfall of under $4 million in September last year, and now that shortfall has grown.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ife. Can I seek a seconder, please, for the alternate motion? Seconded, Councillor Hamer. So the alternate motion is on the table. Deputy Mayor Ife, do you wish to speak to your alternate motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vernon. I will speak very briefly. This alternate is not about blaming anyone. It's simply a reflection of the fact that our advocacy has not yet succeeded in securing the extra funding that's needed. There is unfortunate timing at play here, the timing of the contractor's deadline being before the timing of the state budget and before any timing where our state or federal members might be able to inform us of whether or not this project will appear in a budget or in an election promise, means that we're left with very few places to turn. If the timing had been different, I suspect that I would have moved a different motion tonight. This alternate does not entirely close off the possibility of the project being able to proceed if funding were to be secured at a budget or an election promise or by another party, but it recognises that we're not in a position to fund this shortfall now. I understand that this will be disappointing for the football club, particularly for the women's teams, and I share that disappointment, but we simply can't be expected to fill this funding gap at this stage. Essentially, we're left yet again with uncertainty over whether the shortfall will be funded by another level of government and an inability at this stage to meet the shortfall ourselves. So this leaves the door open for funding from another level of government to fill the gap. It would be premature to believe that this is the end of the road entirely. In fact, far from it, but it's a point on this road where the timing does not permit us to proceed at this stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Councillor Hamer is the seconder. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Just briefly, I want to thank Deputy Mayor Ife for the motion and for including the ability for option 6 in the report, which mentions the state government option to arrange for a lease or sale of the property, which has been discussed by the football club tonight as their preferred option if funding cannot be available. So I'm glad that that's still a part of this process. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Councillor Minson, I do know that you submitted a number of questions about this item. I'm not sure that you received any answers to your questions prior to the commencement of this meeting, but I was in another meeting in the hour before this one started, so I'm not sure if you've had answers to your questions or you've decided that you still wish to ask those questions tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I haven't received a formal response to those questions yet. Maybe I'll just ask the town, are they in a position to answer those questions now, or otherwise I am happy to proceed without answers at this stage.
All right, well, I will just inquire of the Chief Operations Officer. Are the questions that Councillor Minson submitted yesterday, are answers available to those questions at this time?
Yes, they are, Madam Mayor.
All right, so answers are available, Councillor Minson, to the questions you submitted. Do you want to ask them now? And if so, please proceed to go through them one question at a time and we'll get the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think at this stage there's no requirement for us to go through those questions one by one in this setting. So, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions in relation to this item? So this is in relation to the alternate motion or the item otherwise? All right, then I'm formally going to ask if there is any dissent to the alternate motion. There being no indication of dissent, formally then declare that the alternate motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so I recognise that for those who are in the public gallery in relation to this particular item, the alternate motion will not be the outcome that you were hoping for, which undoubtedly would have been the officer's recommendation to proceed to fund the shortfall. But as Deputy Mayor Ife has mentioned, this is not a decision of this council to end this project. There are many steps we would need to take before we made a decision to bring this project to an end. It is also not a reflection of a lack of commitment by this council to sporting facilities that support women in football and indeed women in any sport that they choose to pursue. This is an issue about the need for further funding for this project to support a state football-based code, and we look forward to the state government finding the opportunity to re-engage with the town with regards to their formal position on this. And of course we will be starting our election advocacy or advancing our election advocacy with the federal representatives in the federal election. We have already had preliminary discussions with both the major candidates. They are both aware of this project. They've both received a detailed brief. One of them is very familiar with the project, the other one a little less so, but both of them are at least at the preliminary stage quite supportive of the project's outcomes. So we remain hopeful that they will step into the fray, and given that the federal election is scheduled to have to be heard by 17 May, we expect to see some fairly I would say flourishes in our advocacy coming up in the next couple of weeks as that election gets announced. So that is what I would want to say that people can take away from where council has landed this evening. Item 11 on the agenda is motion of which previous notice has been given. This is a motion in relation to the Carlisle traffic management issues, which unfortunately was deferred from our ordinary council meeting on the 18th of March, which could not be completed. So we're already in the middle of hearing this item. So the motion has been moved and seconded. We were in the middle of hearing debate on an amendment put forward by Councillor Melrosa, at which point questions were being asked when we concluded at the ordinary council meeting, and answers were being given to a series of questions. Councillor Melrosa, is it your wish to continue with your proposed amendment this evening?
So over the weekend, I gave it extra thought, and in light of some other information and some other amendments that were proposed by others and their justifications, which I thought were quite good, I've decided to rescind my amendment and allow those to continue forward.
All right, thank you. So under our meeting procedures, local law, it is open to a member who moves an amendment motion to withdraw their amendment motion prior to it being fully debated and determined. So on that basis, Councillor Melrosa's amendment motion is now formally withdrawn. We did also have indications at the ordinary council meeting last Tuesday that there were more amendments in the wind. Those amendments have proceeded to be shared further with elected members, and refinements are being proposed to be made to them in terms of there being two which initially related to different matters, and now there is some, I guess you could say, crossover or duplication in relation to them. I've determined that Councillor Hamer's amendment, if he wishes to do so, would be moved next after Councillor Melrosa's. So, Councillor Hamer, did you wish to move an amendment to this item?
I did, thanks, Mayor Vernon, but I think there was a question.
Yes,
from
we'd need to get it on the record. Deputy Mayor Ife.
Sorry, Mayor Vernon, I have a question. Last week when we discussed this, item 2 was, we agreed to a change in the wording, but that hasn't been reflected in our agenda tonight.
Okay, the Manager of Governance informs me that the agenda needs to contain the original item as it appeared, but that it has already been recorded in the note-taking system that the updated wording has been incorporated into the motion. So that is in relation to point 2. So there's been no change to that. That was adopted by myself as the mover and ratified by Councillor Melrosa as the seconder. So sorry that it doesn't appear on the screen, but it is part of what we are now talking about tonight. So we continue from where we left off. Thank you. Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I just had those two minor amendments to your motion, mostly being part 2, which was to remove the speed cushions installed on Archer Street, Carlisle between Planet Street, Orang Road by the date given 30th of June 2025. And then into point 3, I was going to include the cost of installing the possible options, including a raised or dedicated crossing for locations on Archer Street between Bishop Street and Star Street. With part B, the funds required to accomplish the traffic management review, which we've talked about at the previous meeting with the officers.
All right, thank you. What I will do is get you to please read out for us your reasons. It can either be a shortened form of what was in your document or the whole of it if you consider that's necessary to outline your reason before I seek a mover and, a seconder. And I'm just going to double check something with the Manager of Governance. So before I have you start, I'll do that. All right, so I've received that advice. That was in relation to what I had foreshadowed would be done with Councillor Melrosa's previous amendment, and that is that I'll be seeking a seconder in due course for your entire amendment, but then I will seek to have the debate on the first part of your amendment go first, and then the second part of your amendment will go second, so that elected members will have their opportunity to vote separately on the two limbs of your amendment, because there may be some people who are interested in voting for one limb of your amendment and not the other. And yeah, so that's what I've determined. So now you're welcome to offer your reason for it.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. For the councillors that didn't get a chance to read the full reasons, I'll dictate that now. Firstly, the common ground about this amendment, they are that speed cushions along Archer Street are clearly not here to stay, but we have a few options and opinions as to when they can be removed. The second part was the importance of the Carlisle traffic study to inform the holistic approach to traffic management with the aim to avoid reactive treatments and unintended consequences in the future. The importance of pedestrians being able to cross a busy arterial road like Archer Street safely that has nearly 12,000 vehicles a day. The small amendments I'm asking you to support give clarity to when the speed cushions be removed. I have selected a date in the short term that is before the expected date with which the town will have the capacity to deliver the as yet unknown alternative. I'm comfortable with this because of the following. Number one, the risk associated from cars going faster than 50 kilometres per hour has already been mitigated by the road treatments such as landscaping and road width being reduced by the bike lanes. The town are unable to give an exact measurement of how effective each of these have been on the ground, as we only have speed data recorded after all three treatments were completed. The section of road will still have two other treatments in place, with the aim keeping average speeds closer to 50 kilometres per hour. Apparently no industry standards are available to predict how effective landscaping in skinny streets are by themselves, but we part of the traffic study that is part of this motion to answer that question and inform other parts of the town. Also, main roads have not suggested speed cushions be installed at this location. Number two, without them, we will have better access for emergency services, less noise, and approximately 12,000 cars per day not braking and accelerating from 50 kilometres per hour to 10 and back to 50 again. Part three, once Metronet is finished with the Carlisle traffic data, can be gathered, giving Archer Street, having Archer Street perform at its baseline without speed cushions will be very beneficial, as it won't distort the driving behaviour of people trying to avoid that section of road and using like Roberts and Oak Street, for example. These two things need to have taken place before we can truly be informed of what are our best and suitable options in regards to traffic calming at this location. Number five, it is not acceptable to allow these to stay in place until an unknown time period in the future. Waiting until a possible alternative can be considered in a future budget, hit all other milestones, detailed drawings and tender processes, etc., and then await delivery with many other capital works projects that often experience constraints, especially after such a clear message from the community and the town staff, who both say that they should be removed. Also, the Archer Street project has had its fair share of criticism, and the community have raised a great number of concerns. This is our opportunity to show we are listening and can show that we are learning, and this small modification to remove the speed cushions will go a long way, hopefully, in rebuilding some of that trust that we are, in fact, trying to deliver something that works for everyone. Part 7. The other part of the amendment is to include the cost of doing the traffic survey of Carlisle in this year's coming budget, so that piece of work can commence when normal traffic patterns resume after Metronet is complete. So I ask for your support in the removal of the speed cushions before 30 June 2025, giving the officers ample time to communicate this change to Main Road and update any signage, etc. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Hamer, for putting up this amendment. Can I now please seek a seconder for Councillor Hamer's amendment? All right, that amendment is seconded by myself. Councillor Hamer, you wish to speak formally to your amendment. Before I do that, Councillor Melrosa, did you have your hand up? All right.
For a moment, then I gave it because I thought we were trying to work out how to turn the voting panel on.
No, I was not working out how to turn the voting panel on. I think I've been doing that for long enough to know how to do it, thanks. Was there something else that you wanted to raise? No? All right, thank you. Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I think I've given my reasons clearly enough, but I will close any other questions or take any questions about this, those 2 points happily.
All right, thank you. Since this is an amendment that we haven't come to as yet, and I will just remind everyone that a procedural motion was moved on the last occasion before we deferred this item to suspend the rule against speaking twice that exists in our meeting procedures local law. Notwithstanding the deferral of the item from last Tuesday to tonight, that doesn't obviate the previous procedural motion that the rule against speaking twice is currently suspended for the duration of this item. The item hasn't been concluded, so that remains the case. So I'm formally going to ask, are there any questions about this amendment? This is an opportunity for people to ask their questions before we move through to debate or comments that people wish to make. Councillor Cruiser.
I think that we may have had this answer, but I just want to be sure I understand correctly. Is the town's advice that we remove these rubber speed cushions without replacing them with anything?
Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, the town's advice is that we appreciate that they can be removed but replaced immediately after, so there's no long time frame between the replacement of the speed cushions.
Councillor Hamer, the Manager of Governance, has pointed out to me something that I think did come up in the rather lengthy discussion last Tuesday. With your amendment to point 2, although you've used some bold lettering in your amendment to indicate that what your amendment is the words in bold. However, the motion as on the table for point 2 is remove and replace the rubber speed cushions as part of the planned upgrades scheduled in the annual budget. And your amendment reads remove the speed cushions installed in that area by 30 June. So is that on the basis that you're not seeking a remove and replace them by 30 June, you're just seeking a flat removal? So you're seeking to substitute the current point 2 into the reworded format, and it's not just about what's in the bold, it's the whole of it. Is that right?
That is the intent, and I'm fully aware that the expectation that they be removed and replaced by 30 June is not possible, and my reasons for that are explained by the fact that the risks of the speeds going higher than 50 kilometres back to where they were has been mitigated by the previous treatments that have been installed. Yeah.
Thank you. I did understand that that's what it was, but it was a matter that the Manager of Governance and Strategy raised with me. So I think everyone understands that. If there's anyone who doesn't, now's your chance to indicate you've got questions about it if you're not clear. Are there any other questions about Councillor Hamer's proposed amendment? No, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so it looks like we're in a position then to proceed with this. So as the seconder, I'm going to speak to both the points in your proposed amendment. I encourage everyone who wishes to speak about either both the points or only the point you're interested in, noting that I'll be putting them to you to vote upon separately. So, speaking first to point 2, about removing the speed cushions by 30 June 2025. I've spent a great deal of time thinking about this, including since it appeared that last week there were persons who believed that my notice of motion was basically to be read as the immediate removal of the speed cushions when it was not. However, that's been clarified. And whilst I can see that there is certainly a desire by some people in the community for the speed cushions to have been removed a long time ago, and they would no doubt be very supportive of their immediate removal, they do perform a function. They are not the only traffic calming treatment that the town uses, and I have come to the conclusion that it is appropriate for us to be proceeding by a removal and replace as per the town officer's recommendation. They haven't set a specific time for that to occur, and their response to my motion is to indicate it would happen during a proper asset replacement program that will be determined timing-wise through the budget, and that monies will be allocated in the budget, I would expect in order of their priority. So whilst that leaves the issue of when during the 2025-2026 financial year the speed cushions will be removed and replaced, I am also firmly of the view that the timing of that is a matter for the operational determination of the town of Victoria Park. So, whilst I understand there might be some arguments, and I suppose I may hear some of them after I've spoken, and they may challenge my thinking on this about whether there is a way to remove the speed cushions by the 30th of June and still have positive outcomes, at this point in time, based on what I have heard from Councillor Hamer moving this amendment, and what I consider is the information available to me, I would not support point 2 of the amendment. As for point 3, I wholeheartedly endorse that. Obviously, part A is already in my own motion. I accept that the addition of the extra words possible options, including a raised or dedicated crossing. I didn't want to be specific when I referred to it as a dedicated crossing. I wanted to be very wide and broad in my interpretation for that. But if it's considered necessary to clarify that whatever costs are being considered for listing in the budget, they include the option of a raised crossing as well as a dedicated one in all its forms, then I would endorse that. And although I would have thought it would go without saying, given what the officers had said about completing the Carlisle Traffic Management Review from our original resolution, I see no impediment whatsoever to Council endorsing point B of paragraph 3 in the amendment that Councillor Hamer's put forward. So that's how I would see the 2 points. So on that basis, I guess you could say I ended up speaking partly against and partly for, which kind of throws out my rule about who goes next to speak. But I'm just going to treat it on the basis that I was the seconder, so I think I'll formally take the view. Is there anyone who is in dissent for Councillor Hamer's amendment? This is just so that we can go to the argument. So I'm getting an indication there is dissent. So on that basis, is there someone who wishes to speak against Councillor Hamer's proposed amendment? And note that you could do largely the same as I did, speak half and half if you wanted to. Someone who would wish to speak? So Councillor Cruiser, did you wish to speak? Councillor Miles, you want to speak? You have a question? Yes, Councillor
Would
Miles.
it be possible to put the whole thing up so we can,
I think the whole thing is up now.
Yep.
It is on screen. Yep. All right, so Councillor Cruiser, you wish to speak against?
Thank you. Yes, I will begin by saying that various aspects of this motion seem incredibly clever and like a wonderful idea, and I fully support them. Getting us good information about what our options are in the future, I'm fully on board with. However, I also want to note that although we have heard loud and clear that there is significant community opposition to the rubber speed cushions on Archer Street and that they are very inconvenient, I feel deeply reluctant to remove a safety measure, however unpopular it might be. We already know that there was one pedestrian killed in that area this year alone. I would feel really deeply, deeply distressed to find out that there was another pedestrian or cyclist and another person killed in that area because we were unwilling to bear the brunt of being unpopular. And I hope that that is something that at least part of the community in that area understands.
Thank you, Councillor Cruiser. Is there anyone who now wishes to speak in favour or partly in favour of Councillor Hamer's amendment? Councillor Melrosa.
Thanks, Jesse, for fixing my amendment. Sorry, Councillor Hamer. Look, I think this is a good amendment. I think it is probably should have been done quite a while ago. I think the Carlisle community deserve to be given a break. They've taken on board a whole lot of things, not just from our projects, but also other projects going on with Metronet, and people are just genuinely frustrated. And it's come to a point where no matter what the town puts on their social media now, there are people in there that have been known to aggravate around this issue, and it's just evolved and spread. And we really need to put a stop to it. As a user of Archer Street daily, these speed bumps are well, there's only one real word for it, it's a disaster. And it is really frustrating to drive over them. They slow you down too much. I understand the desire to slow down the speeds on this street. I believe the high speed that was registered on this street was 57.8. I don't consider that to be really a great deal in terms of when you compare to the other streets, the data that we've got, it's pretty similar. You might see about 57 kilometres an hour. It's not historically fast. It's probably the old speed limit that the road was on. It also happens to be mostly recorded on uphill stretches, which is naturally when people accelerate. I feel like if we don't do this, we're waiting for a long time, and I think the community understand they're bolt-on speed bumps, and they're going to assume they're bolt-off speed bumps as well. And I take on that view as well. I think that if they've been bolted on, they can be bolted off. What we get left behind is a street that is still remarkably different to what it was to begin with, and remarkably different to when that 57.8 kilometre an hour average 15 percentile or 85 percentile or whatever it is was recorded. Elsewhere on Archer Street, the speeds aren't that fast. It's also interesting to note, I think when we finished stage one of the town centre redevelopment, the first thing that happened, which was super embarrassing, was variable message boards put up at the beginning and the end of the project area, reminding everyone to drive 50 through it. And I think we all understood that that was never our intention to create a street that would go back to 50, but there we were putting variable message signs saying, let's go 50. I mean, it didn't need reminding. I think everybody knows the speed is 50, but we really put it up there in the brightest of lights, and then we wonder why people speed on that street. And I mean, admittedly, right now, you can't speed on the street. You can't even drive on the street. So my argument would be, absolutely, we can remove it. The road's narrower now. It's not as narrow as what it should have been. It should have been 3.2, and yet somehow we got 3.5, which is a freeway width road that you can travel at 100 on. So if we really were wanting to demonstrate a slower speed environment, we would have got the lane width right from the start. So I think I'm very comfortable that the lane width that it is much skinnier than before. The landscaping absolutely slows you down. The roadworks slow you down. The busyness of the street slows you down. And I'm super comfortable that we can take them off, well, I said end of this month, but June 30 is very appropriate for me. So on that point, absolutely agree. Obviously on the other points, I think that's really, really great. I'm absolutely supportive of dedicated crossings. I think we've seen the design of them kind of appear in a way, but they were never really formalised. So I would absolutely support that, and the funds required to accomplish Carlisle Traffic Management Review, that makes sense too. So yes, that's why I'm going to support this amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Melrosa. Well, since we have suspended the rule against speaking twice, but I am going to ask question first of Councillor Hamer and then Councillor Melrosa. My first question is for both of them, but I'll go to Councillor Hamer first. Is there a particular reason why you chose 30 June 2025 for the removal?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I just chose a date almost 3 months in the future, which was a end of financial year date that just coincides. But I'm assuming there's some bureaucracy that has to happen between local government and Main Roads about street signs and different street treatments. So obviously it's not as simple as just unbolting something and letting the road go back to how it should be. So that obviously has the extra time period for whoever needs to do the work to be procured, or whether the depot does it, or so I'm quite lenient with the time frame, being a short-term frame, not a unknown long-term time point.
Okay, and Councillor Melrosa, did you have any different views to what Councillor Hamer has just referred to about the timing? Because you've said you've come on board to his way of thinking, away from yours, which was immediate removal. So are you happy with the reasons he's put forward for the 30th of June?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some things you have to deal with in terms of traffic management and getting contractors to do that work. And maybe I didn't think of that at the start. I just thought the town's own officers or depot personnel might want to just go down there, but there probably is some rules around that. So yeah, I think 30 June is reasonable. Still a while away yet.
All right, thank you. That clarifies your bolt-off comment. Can I just ask the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams, are there steps that the town would need to take with Main Roads with regards to removing the speed humps and signage, as opposed to what we need to go through to put them in?
So, Madam Mayor, in terms of removing them, I believe we don't need to get their permission from Main Roads, and because the signage was approved under their delegation for the speed humps, I'd be quite confident in saying that they would then remove them if our speed humps are no longer required.
All right, thank you. And I do note that I think the town staff were asked to give a costing for what it would cost to remove the speed humps. If the speed humps were to be removed as per Councillor Hamer's amendment, what needs to be done? Does the town need to get a contractor in to remove them, or is the contractor really needed to remediate the asphalt underneath the speed humps if they are removed? Like, I'm just trying to work out what's necessary. Is that in fact even doable if council were to agree to Councillor Hamer's amendment by 30 June?
Madam Mayor, it was the town's intention to use a contractor to remove the speed cushions, and that was because they're chemi anchored in, and so it was more that removal and then the small patching. So the cost estimate allowed for a minor amount of traffic management as well as a contractor. And as to the availability of those contractors, we would have to look at that.
All right, thank you. Next question is for Councillor Hamer and Councillor Melrosa. Noting that what I've requested is in my motion was the removal of the rubber speed cushions between Planet and Orrong, of which there are 3 sets of them. Is there a set of those rubber speed cushions that you consider are more dangerous than the others to both pedestrian cyclist safety as well as driver safety on that stretch of the road? Councillor Hamer first.
I wouldn't use the word. I wouldn't cast aspersions that the speed bumps are actually dangerous to anyone, but I would probably prefer that the ones closest to March Hamley be removed, if that was my pick, to remove any at all.
Is there a reason for that?
It's so far away from the roundabout and the intersection, and it's before the hill. It seems overkill to ask cars to slow down before the hill, then go over a hill, come down a hill, and then slow down again. I don't understand the positioning of that. If you're trying to get cars to slow down before an intersection, like on Star Street, I can understand the positioning of those speed cushions close to intersections, but I don't understand it in the middle of that length of road. Yeah.
All right. Councillor Melrosa, you said you use Archer Street daily. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think the Machanley one is problematic because once you've turned off Orrong Road, you've got 2 sets of cars trying to funnel into one lane, and then the first cars are already stopping for the speed bump, and then all those cars then have to stop, and then it actually prevents people from merging and also turning off of Orrong onto Archer Street in some cases. So you've just got off the road, and then you're going up the hill and you're slowing down again to 10 k's an hour, which is about 40 k's less than the speed limit desired. And so absolutely, I think that one's the most problematic one, even though it is also the one in the recorded stretch where I think there was about a 57km/h speed limit. But that goes without saying, it's because people are accelerating up a hill, and that's not everyone. It's like, 15% of drivers. I think the ones next to the roundabout aren't as problematic because you're already approaching the roundabout and you are already thinking of slowing down, or you have slowed down. And that would go for the one on the other side of the road that's on the approach to the roundabout. Although I do find that one somewhat problematic. I find them all problematic.
Thanks, Councillor Melrosa. I now have a question for Ms Adams. In terms of the 3 sets of speed humps, is there any of those 3 sets of speed humps that the town considers could be removed by 30 June? So if there was to just be one, is there one that the town would consider could be done both in terms of the cost of it, the work that would need to be done, and the amount of time between now and 30 June for that to be done, where there would still be some, I guess, sufficient overall benefit to traffic there, noting that we had the streetscape improvement plan stage 1, then we had the protected bicycle lanes, and then we had the rubber speed cushions. So, and if that's not clear as a question, I'm happy to repeat it, but it is there one of the set of 3 that the town considers could be removed by 30 June?
In short, Mayor, from a practical point of view, it is possible to remove the speed cushions. We don't see that they would take a lot of time, and subject to the availability of contractors and traffic management, practically speaking, it could be done. Just in relation to the question you asked about the benefit to traffic, on balance, we're looking at the safety of pedestrians and vulnerable users and cyclists, as opposed to the benefit to those using vehicles. And just, if I may, in relation to a question Councillor Hamer posed about not understanding with regards to the one up near Marchamley Street, there is Nido Early Learning School in that location, and that was one of the reasons why we did place speed cushions in that location to slow traffic down in that area. And I appreciate it is a bit further away from the Star Street roundabout, but I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. I have a follow-up question though. Obviously, the way the motion stands at the moment, it is on the basis that it's a remove and replace as part of planned upgrades. What, if anything, can the town say for the benefit of council about when in the 25-26 financial year you anticipate being in a position to remove these speed humps? Because Councillor Hamer's proposing a 30 June date, which is the end of the current financial year. But if, for example, the town were to be adopting, or council were to be adopting its budget close to the 30th of June, how soon after the 30th of June would you be considering this needs a priority for removing these speed humps and replacing them with the interventions your officer report suggests they'll be replaced with? Ms Adams.
At this stage, Madam Mayor, I would be confident only committing to the financial year 25-26. There are a number of steps that we have to go through, including completing design, consultation for some of the treatments, and also funding applications.
So based on your last answer referring to funding applications, am I to understand that whatever further traffic interventions you have foreshadowed in your reports that you'd be looking to install, you consider they won't be able to be installed without external funding from the town? Ms Adams?
Madam Mayor, we believe that they can be funded through the town's funding only. However, they do meet criteria for external funding. So it was the town's intention to include some of those locations as part of external funding requests.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone now who wishes to speak against? Deputy Mayor Ife.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I too am grateful that this amendment is being split into two, because I do completely support the changes to point 3, and I thank Councillor Hamer for moving them. I don't support the removal of the speed cushions by the 30th of June without the replacement of them by another safety mechanism. I remain more concerned about safety of pedestrians, other cars, cyclists and all road users than I do about whether it's somewhat inconvenient to have to slow down on that stretch of road. I have speed bumps on my street, and I have for over 20 years. Now, I get that my street is a much quieter street than Archer Street, which may actually be partly due to these speed bumps, but until last week, in over 20 years of living there, I have never paid attention to the speed that I need to drive over these speed bumps in order to drive over them safely without going clunkety clunk and my car falling over. But after last week, I started paying attention. I've just done it by feel. Last week I started paying attention, and it's 15 kilometres an hour. So on my own street, I have to slow down to 15 kilometres an hour on 3 separate occasions to get to my front door. And that's not actually inconvenient to me at all. It's just how I drive down my street. It makes my street safer. It makes my street quieter. I use Archer Street fairly frequently, and I have members of my family that use Archer Street at least 6 times a week. And they agree that you have to slow down considerably for these speed cushions, but they don't agree that they need to be removed immediately. There is more concern in my mind for safety on that stretch of road than there is for the ability to drive your cars at a faster speed. So I would be content for these to be removed in the new financial year when they're being replaced with some other mechanism to reduce speed. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Miles?
So I am in support of point 3, installing a dedicated pedestrian crossing and also accomplishing a Carlisle traffic management review. I'm not in support of removing the speed cushions by the 30th of June 2025. I understand that the rubber speed cushions are very unpopular. I think every councillor here understands that they're unpopular. A lot of people in the community are saying that they're not against traffic management per se, they just don't like this style. And so I think being able to change them to something more suitable is a good idea. I don't like the idea of removing them straight away because I guess we don't know how fast people are going to travel. Whilst the skinny streets may slow down the speeds, we don't know. And I'd be concerned if we remove them without doing something else, that members of the community might think that that's an endorsement that they can go back to going fast on that road. And the problem would be that if there is an accident, you know, if there is a car crash or a pedestrian gets hit or a cyclist gets hit, that it would be on us because we removed the safety measures. So I'm not comfortable with that. The other thing that's important, I think, is that the bike lanes, before the bike lanes were installed, there was a median strip where pedestrians could wait and cyclists could wait when they were crossing the road. Maybe not cyclists, but pedestrians could wait while crossing the road. Since the bike lanes have been built, there is no median strip. So the speed bumps are really useful for people crossing the road. So I live on Poultridge Ave, which is it's a cul-de-sac, but it backs onto Archer Street. So I use Archer Street all the time. I use it, I get the 39 bus which goes there, I use it on my bike and I have a car. If you go down and Poultridge is one next to Marshamley, so literally it's the street across. And the speed bump at Marshamley is really helpful when you go down the pedestrian bike path and then you want to cross to get the bus, the number 39 that goes off Archer Street. Pedestrians can cross the road to get the bus because the speed bump is there, so the traffic slows down. I have neighbours on my street that have children. There's an elderly lady who's over 90 who uses public transport all the time. I don't think she'd be able to cross the road without those speed bumps. So that whilst it might seem like it's a long way from the town centre, I think it's important that we have these crossing points. And ultimately, I think it would be good to do a Carlisle traffic management review. But in the short term, I think the speed cushions need to stay until we can put in some other solutions that benefit cyclists, pedestrians and car users.
Thanks, Councillor Miles. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to add, I will be supporting point 3. I won't be supporting point 2. And that's just in relation to the speed cushions were installed for safety measures. So I'm supportive of the removal and the replacement. I don't want to see a lapse in time to have a period of time where our vulnerable users are vulnerable. There was a reason the speed cushions haven't worked out, and the replacement, we need time to figure out what that is and what that's going to look like, and how it will be installed. There's a whole series of variables that the staff need to work through so that we can get it right and it works for everyone, car users, vulnerable users, and so that Archer Street can also be more efficient as well for our emergency services as well. Can't imagine going down there at the moment in an ambulance. That would be such a challenge. So, but let's work on getting this right and giving the staff the time that they need to be able to work through from an engineering perspective and what will work functionally. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. I do want to not forget Councillor Minson. I do keep occasionally looking up at you, but I take it you'd let me know if you were wanting to speak at some stage or you've got questions. Sometimes it's easy to forget that you're there on the screen.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I'll let you know if I have anything.
All right, good. Is there anybody else who wants to say anything with relation to this matter? Councillor Devereux.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, and thanks, Councillor Hamer, for suggesting and thinking about this amendment, and thanks also to Councillor Melrosa for graciously withdrawing the other that complicated things a little bit. I raised the question when this motion was initially put on the table. I raised the question to staff about the potential safety concerns if we removed the speed cushions without replacing them with anything, and received information that did make me concerned if that were to happen. So I was glad to receive the clarification that that wouldn't be planned. I do think we have received a lot of community concerns over the last 2 years about safety, road safety in Carlisle, particularly over the last 2 years. And it's been great that the town has been looking at that and working on that. But I think that really shows that there is a deep community concern for safety in Carlisle. And as we know from the 40 kilometre speed limit proposal by the Inner City Councils Group as well, that that 40 kilometre speed is safer for all users of the roads. I do think we need measures that will protect all users in the town of Vic Park, and I think we want to be mindful of really positive initiatives like the bike bus that has got children more safely to school, and also last week a lot of our schools in Vic Park participated in the bike to school activities last Friday. That shows how important those activities are to give a visibility to children on our roads, and again the importance of cars slowing down to allow those users to be safer. But it's not only for children, as we heard earlier, it's really important to think about all vulnerable users that are crossing our roads, that are near our roads, pedestrians, cyclists, and senior citizens. And I'm conscious that on the corner of Star and Archer, there is a senior citizens home. And so there are people from that home and carers of those that are trying to traverse the roads as well that need to be kept safe. I think our integrated transport strategy also highlights that across the town, we want to cater to all users and we don't want to just solve individual streets with individual measures. We want to have a more comprehensive approach, and I really value the town's efforts in that regard. And I think the more that we try and just make micro adaptations to individual treatments that staff have suggested, then we're in danger of actually undermining that comprehensive, systematic, holistic approach across the town in terms of integrated transport. And so on that basis, I don't support the change to the point 2, but I do appreciate points 3 and 4, and I do think having the funds available to have a comprehensive Carlisle traffic management review is really important. I also personally feel like we need something more than that actually involves the community in owning what those best solutions are to keep the situation safer for all users. But yeah, so I won't support item 2, but I do support item 3. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to the item or has anything they want to raise? Because we're not using the one speaking opportunity. Councillor Melrosa.
Make the most of being able to speak again. I'll keep it short. I think, and while I acknowledge, I think this is point 2 is not going to get up by the sounds of what my fellow councillor is talking about. I think it's worth again raising and maybe focusing on the fact that if we are so unconfident about people's driving ability and the safety of the road, if we remove a device that arguably just doesn't belong in an environment like this, it says a lot about the actual design of the road to begin with. Obviously, right at the start, these speed bumps weren't the preferred design. They weren't in the design, and they weren't in the design the community saw, and then they popped out, bolted on themselves on the road, and here we are dealing with them. But it goes back to the design of the road still being maybe incorrect. I personally have enough faith in the fact that the lanes are probably narrow enough to slow cars down. But again, I think if they were narrower, that might be more helpful. And given this is really only the first major stage of the bike lanes and there is still another bunch of stages to go, that perhaps this is the lesson for the town to look at what they're doing for the next stages that are further up. And obviously we're not going to probably get these bumps removed, but the good thing is I think we all agree that they need to be removed, and they will be removed, and the timing of it, I'm not going to die in a ditch over whether it happens. I think the community will be pretty upset that it isn't happening any sooner, but I think that they can probably rest assured that it will happen, and they will just have to persevere a little bit longer. But I think they are probably used to that, and they will be persevering on a whole number of matters for a little while longer anyway. So that's all I'll say on that one.
Thanks, Councillor Melrosa. I mean, I have been listening to what people have been saying, and I probably do have a little caution with comments that are around that the speed bumps were put in place to make things safer for lots of road users. But my understanding is that speed cushions are put in to slow cars down. They're not put in to create opportunities for pedestrians to cross the road, because they're by no means a safe way for pedestrians to cross the road, is to just wait till they see a car maybe going over a speed hump slowly and then take their chances. So I am concerned that that is something that I seem to be gleaning from some of the comments that are made. But I also am aware of anecdotal information that's been given to me by some road users out there that car drivers are engaging in very dangerous behaviours to avoid the speed humps, and that includes them basically utilising or trying to damage our protected bicycle lanes to get around them. That to me seems to be highly risky behaviour. If people are so annoyed by speed humps that they're willing to do just about anything to get past them, then that creates a problem for us. But I perhaps will turn it into a question for the town with regards to particularly the loss of what I call safe harbour refuges in the middle of roads, like islands in the middle, that do allow pedestrians and to some degree cyclists and other road users who are on mobility devices and the like to get from one side of a busy road to the other, that we seem to have lost at least in one portion of this road. And I note the officer's report talks about putting them back. Was there a particular consideration given to why we would take those opportunities away? Because that's one of the reasons my original motion had point 3 in it. I had some specific lobbying by some parents who walk their children to school from one side of Archer Street all the way through to the Lathlane Primary School, and they're now finding significant challenges to find a safe place to get across the road. And it kind of feels counterintuitive to me that we've been talking a lot about how we tried to make Archer Street safer, but in actual fact, a cohort of people who really need to get across the road have found it much harder. And I remember the 2 people who are vision impaired who reached out to me when the town centre upgrade was done to say we had a nice little safe harbour refuge in the middle of the road, right between the Caring Pharmacy and Totally Thai, that we used every day, and now we don't have it. And because we're both vision impaired, we're stuck with being unable to cross Archer Street now. So our walks are basically confined to one side of Archer Street. I know I've ventilated and requested things be done about that for some time, but here we are, I'd say a year and a half after I first raised it, and there's still no safe point to cross over Archer Street at the Planet Street intersection. But I am interested in knowing and understanding what the town thinks is the real priority. Is it trying to get people safely across the road? Because I don't think that's the purpose of speed cushions. I'm indicating Mr. Doy, perhaps to answer that question. Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So in the original, absolutely the priority is to be able to get people to safely cross the road. That's an absolute priority of the design. In the original concept, the median was removed in order to fit the bike lanes and the protected curbing into the actual road pavement, as well as accommodate a 3.5 metre lane width, which is a requirement of the PTA. So we couldn't get around the 3.5 metre lane. We advocated to the highest levels, but the 3.5 metre lane was as narrow as we were allowed to go because it's a bus route. So we couldn't fit the median in. As the design has been completed and we reflect, there are opportunities, as you can see in the officer's response to the notice of motion, to be able to include some improvements to facilitate a safe crossing at particular intersections, which is an improvement on reflection. But hopefully that explains the rationale in the first instance for the removal of the medians. In terms of the speed humps, while speed humps aren't obviously a crossing device, they do slow vehicles and slower moving vehicles on the street in and of itself does create a safer pedestrian environment. First of all, you are able to navigate with the cars to be able to cross, as well as the impact of a car is much less for the pedestrian if there is a collision. So inherently it creates a safer street. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Doy. It does raise a really good question that goes back to my earlier one. So delighted to know that getting people across the road is the highest priority. And so if that is the highest priority, then I do wonder about the merit of the suggestion that we will only be seeking to put dedicated crossings back in the 25-26 financial year, but leaving it to us trying to get external grant funding. That seems to me that we won't be prioritising trying to get people across the road. We'll be producing designs to get them across the road, and we hope to get some grant funding to help us do it. Doesn't seem to me to be complementary objectives if the priority is to get people across the road and we recognise lessons learned from the designs we've put in Archer Street, that we no longer have those good opportunities for people to cross the road, then I would expect those to become the priorities, external grant funding notwithstanding. Happy to hear from either Ms Adams or Mr Doy about that. Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify that the intention is for the town to apply for external grants where we meet the criteria, but it's not dependent upon that. And the notes in our response to the notice of motion contain further detail about that. In terms of the stage 2 works currently underway, there are pedestrian crossings there. They just don't have the protected median. So we have been looking, as Mr. Doyle said, at other locations for protected crossings.
All right. Anyone else who wishes to say anything in regards to this before I bring it back to the end? I mean, Councillor Hamer, that's fine. If you've got something you need to raise, please do.
Just a question from the officers, if they did have the answer. I think I raised it at the last meeting about the 40-kilometre-hour proposal and the percentages of safety that would be given if we dropped by 10 kilometres. And I was just curious of the fatalities in the town of pedestrians, or how dangerous it is to be a pedestrian, whether that answer was available yet.
Okay, so I'm probably going to need to go, I think, to Ms. Adams with regards to, do you have the traffic data, and Mr. Doy about the Perth Inner City Group's 40-kilometre project? Because it might be that what we've learned from the Perth Inner City Group is that that's a long end game project, and Main Roads and the government certainly appear to have some views about it. But in terms of traffic data about accidents, that sit with operations, Ms. Adams?
In terms of crash data, that does, but I wasn't of the understanding that was the question with
That
regards
was one
to
of
crash.
Councillor Hamer's questions. It was the
About
second
the
part of his
actual-
question, whether there was data.
I phrased it around how many we lose, which was it?
Not how many we lose. Do we have any traffic accident data around either fatalities or accidents, whether they're fatalities or not? Ms. Adams?
Sorry, if I could have a few minutes while Mr. Doy is answering his part, I can try and get that for you now.
Yep, that would be great. Mr. Doy, take your time.
That's okay. I'll search into my memory banks to the 40-kilometre speed zone, and I'll give this a go. But if I have misinterpreted your question, please let me know, Councillor Hamer, through the Mayor. So from memory, if we go from a 50-kilometre speed limit down to 40 kilometres, we reduce the severity by 200%. Yep, that was my recollection.
Yeah, that was the point, but I was then going to ask how many fatalities we have. So if we're dropping by 10 kilometres, 200%, but if we're only having no fatalities, then there's no real actually gain of it. But obviously the point councillors are making tonight is there's concern of the risk of the safety of all the users of that area, and if the concern of safety is front of mind, I'm trying to work out how actually real world, what is the risk to pedestrians, cyclists in town, if that was known. Yeah.
Mr. Doy, anything that you can shed on that?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I could probably only answer it conceptually for Archer Street, because if you ask me to answer that for the town, well, it depends, because there's lots of different conditions across the town. But for Archer Street, I would say at the moment the incidence, or at least severity, for a car colliding with a cyclist or a pedestrian is significantly reduced, because the speed has significantly reduced. So there are a lot of cars on Archer Street. The volume is high, and we know that a lot of the reason for that is the changing traffic conditions with all the construction, with Metronet and diversions. However, the speed is significantly reduced. So I would say that it is a safer environment for pedestrians and cyclists.
But we don't know the number of events that have dropped by. Okay.
Well, we're going to go to Ms. Adams if she's managed to find them, but while she's still looking, would go back to you though, Mr. Doy, when you say that it's a lower speed environment now because of all the A, works we've been doing, and B, other associated works in the area that are diverting traffic for different reasons. To understand your previous answer to somewhat of a question around this, is that the town is unable to distinguish out the impact of any one of those things. So you can't distinguish between what impact on speed the town centre upgrade had, what impact on speed the addition of the protected bike lanes then had on top of that, let alone the implementation of the rubber speed cushions on top of the first two. Is that right? We're not able to distinguish the differences that any one individual intervention may have made to the overall speeds on the road.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. We can definitely feel comfortable in saying that all of those things combined have reduced the speed, but to be able to separate them out individually and provide any level of accuracy as to which one, has reduced a speed by a certain, particular amount would be extremely difficult to do, unless the Chief Operations Officer has anything they wanted to add to that, but that would be my answer.
Thank you. Ms Adams, you able to help us out with some of the questions?
So through the chair, probably got about some rough data, which is 3 fatalities to the best of our knowledge over the last 5 years. But as to the locations and the impact of various environments and mitigation measures, that's not something we'd be able to answer easily.
So that's not data in relation to Archer Street, or you just don't know if some of it relates to Archer Street or it doesn't? I mean, we all anecdotally hear when sometimes there are accidents in the town and someone is killed, like we did hear about Star Street the other week, but I think your answer to the questions asked about that is the town doesn't know what happened that resulted in that particular pedestrian ending up being killed in circumstances. That could have been someone who accidentally stepped out in front of a car without looking versus some other scenario that could have caused it. Is that fair to say?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. That was my answer last week. And when I'm speaking about our understanding of the number of fatalities, that's across the town.
I don't know if that helps you at all, Councillor Hamer.
It's good to hear there's such a low number. That's great. Yeah.
I would perhaps ask this, and maybe it's a question for both Mr. Doy and Ms. Adams to reflect upon, but information that I did try to articulate at the last meeting last week, it's about when the town measures the speed. So going forward, does the town have a view that it will start to try to measure the speed on roads as a base level before implementing treatments like skinny streets, improvement upgrades, etc. And then once the first stage of those works is implemented, there'll be another dedicated taking of the traffic speeds. And then if there are further staged works in the same area, we will seek to incrementally test what is the speed and gather the data at each juncture, so we can in future look and say we did that intervention and it produced provisionally that result, and then we found that was not good enough and it didn't reduce the speed well enough, and so we applied another level of intervention and that got us to the point we wanted to be at, or it didn't. Is that something the town has a view on going forward that it would look to do? Because clearly tonight and last week's discussions have shown that people want to know where the data is to back up some of the arguments and concerns that we've been raising. So happy to go to Mr. Doy first. You already come off the rank on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Evaluation data pre-project is really critical, and post-project is so you can have a point of comparison is critical. What I would say with Archer Mint is we have a very strong understanding of what the speed was in the concept work, but measuring it throughout the project and the stages and even between implementation of elements is something for reflection as well. And then understanding not only speed data but the Healthy Streets framework and metrics around walkability and a whole range of different things is actually really important as well, which is something that we're thinking about and committed to with Skinny Streets and other projects.
Thank you. Ms. Adams, any reflections on that from the operational side of things?
Not much more, Madam Mayor, other than to say I agree with Mr. Doy. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Devereux?
I just, given the talk about data, and I don't think I ever saw a written answer to the questions, but I do believe I got the verbal answer to the question when I asked about the approximate volume of local streets that were experiencing excessive speed last week, but I don't think I received them in writing, but I do think those were quoted last week, so that was data that was available. I don't know if you have it at hand. Do you still have that data to hand? If you do, could you remind us of it? Thank you.
Mr. Doy, do you have it?
I do. I do have that in the memory banks, and just make sure that we've sent that through as well, because we have provided that. We have written it down, so if we haven't sent it, we'll just make sure that we have. It's 46 local roads within the town that have regular speeds in the 85th percentile, which are over the 55 kilometre an hour average, which is speedy. Yep.
Great, and I will appreciate having that in writing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Doy. When that comes out to elected members, it would be very useful if it could be as a comparison to the total number of streets that we have in the town, and also it would be useful if it could be broken down on the basis that, are you referring to local roads that the town manages, or are you including distributor and primary routes that the town is not responsible for, such as Berwick Street, Shepparton Road, Orrong Road, etc. Those main roads, Albany Highway in parts, so that we really understand what information we're being given. Yes? Is that fine? Thank you. Councillor Melrosa.
In addition to what you've suggested, can we just see it on a map drawn, the segment that it is appropriated to? It's just helpful in terms of seeing it spatially.
I think might have to see what, if anything, the town can do in that regard. They may or may not have that available. I don't think it would be appropriate tonight for us to ask for something to be developed that requires, for example, us to buy software packages to create it, etc., etc. If it's readily available, I'm sure the town's executive have heard that point and they'll be able to accommodate it. But if they can't accommodate it spatially, they'll do it in the best way they have already available to hand. And that might be something that you want to think about for budget workshops going forward, if you're looking for better software or something like that than we currently have. So, if there's no one else who has anything that they want to say or raise, I'll go to Councillor Hamer as the mover of the amendment to close the debate.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just wanted to close by saying the officers have say the speed cushions were installed as we got data showing that some drivers were going over the 50 kilometres per hour, but this was 3 or so years ago. It's not present day behaviour. Nothing was done at that point in time, but we did install a number of treatments as part of the development of the area, which had no mention of speed bumps in what was communicated to us or the community. The residents and the council have been blindsided by this addition, and it's now open to us to respond. I get that we are super risk adverse, but this is not the right treatment for an arterial road. They belong in a car park. Apparently we assume the risk just fine for the other 46 streets that have a higher average speed with no proposal to have the same speed bumps fitted. If it turns out that the other treatments in place on Archer Street, being the Skinny Street and landscaping, are not enough to keep speed safe, then why are we installing them? The upcoming traffic study will show if this is actually required, and I'll be the first to bring back a motion to rebolt them should that not be the case. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. All right, so we'll now ask elected members to cast their vote on the amendment for only point 2. So remember I said we're going to vote on them separately. So I'm just calling at the moment for your vote on point 2 of Councillor Hamer's amendment. I'm just going to make sure that the Minute Secretary has that set up for voting, which is just that first point. So you're only voting for or against that part of the amendment at this stage. Problem, Councillor Anderson? Did you accidentally press the wrong thing? In that case, can I ask the Minute Secretary? The Minute Secretary has deleted that recorded electronic vote, and if you could please cast your vote again. All right, so the amendment is lost. Those who were in favour of the amendment are Councillors Anderson, Deputy Mayor Ive, Councillor Miles, Councillor Cruiser, Councillor Devereux and Councillor Minson. And those who are against it, and those who are for are Councillor Hamer, Councillor Melrosa and myself, Mayor Vernon. So that's lost. Now, with regards to the second part of Councillor Hamer's amendment, I'm going to just say, is there any dissent, since I didn't hear any? No, there being no dissent, declare the second part carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Councillor Hamer, for bringing that forward for a good debate and discussion. So now understand, Councillor Cruiser, you've got an amendment that you're seeking to make as well. No, you can start speaking to it, but there I think it has come up now. There's just a little bit. Yeah, and so the question is, are you wanting to keep, well, I assume you're not wanting to keep point 3 in yours. You're just looking at focusing on point 4?
Yes, I'm
Yes,
happy to
thank
just
you.
focus on point 4.
All right, if you'd like to read out for us your amendment, and then we'll get your reason, and then I'll seek a seconder.
Okay, this adds point 4 that Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to Council by February 2026 outlining the options for and costs of engaging in a collaborative place design process that would facilitate the creation of a traffic management plan for Carlisle in response to the outcome of the traffic management review. And my reason for this is that we have received considerable feedback from sections of the community in Carlisle that they feel they've not been consulted when it comes to traffic management and the development of the Carlisle Town Centre. A collaborative design process hopefully will mean that they have opportunities to do that. This amendment doesn't commit us to actually doing that collaborative place design process, but allows us to get a better understanding of how we might go about it, how much it would cost, what our options are for doing that. The information that we have is that traffic flows will have normalised by early 2026, and this will allow us to begin thinking about how to engage in a deeper process of community consultation. For example, thinking about options around whether that can be done in-house and whether that might be best done by external consultants.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Can I seek a seconder for this amendment, please? Okay. Seconded, Councillor Miles. Thank you. Councillor Cruiser, did you wish to speak to your amendment?
Just briefly, I want to acknowledge that not only have we heard a lot from the community about their desire to have their input considered, but we've also heard from many people on council the importance of that, including in the previous debate, the advocacy from Councillor Devereux and his long-term advocacy for that kind of collaborative design process. This doesn't commit us to doing this, but it does allow us to get a better understanding of how best we might go about it. And then we can make an informed decision about what we do when it comes to doing that design process.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Councillor Miles, do you wish to be heard on the proposed amendment?
Yeah, I support this amendment. I feel like the community in Carlisle does feel like they're not listened to and that things happen without their knowledge, and there appears to be a desire for engagement. I think Carlisle seems to kind of put most of its efforts into Facebook and sharing opinions on Facebook, which don't really go anywhere, and it's not clear what the community as a whole think. And I feel like a productive outlet with a proper process where people could really engage with what the town is proposing and their ideas would be a really positive outcome for the people of Carlisle.
Thanks, Councillor Miles. I'm going to ask, are there any questions from elected members about this particular proposed amendment? No, no one's indicating questions. Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just a question for the officers. Did they have like a rough costing of what that would cost to achieve?
So, Councillor Hamer, do you mean a cost to achieve the report by February 2026, which is a report about the options and the costs? Because
Yeah,
I
I'm
understood
aware of
them
the
to be
irony.
the options and the costs for the substantive item, but you're talking about the costs of preparing the report. Is that right?
Yes, thanks.
Yes. All right. Ms. Adams, is it Ms. Adams or Mr. Doy for this? Like, I'm not sure because this talks about some kind of collaborative place design process, which may not be operations, maybe place planning. Yes. Okay. Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. The Chief Operating Officer is right in saying that it's both of us. We do everything together. In terms of the cost to prepare the report, that will include the costings and timing and so on. There's no cost to that. That's us preparing the options, for you to consider. Yeah.
All right. So when you say no cost, you mean no resources that will be needed to prepare it?
Sorry,
No?
there will be resources. Yes, so we will need to prepare the report, but there will be no monetary cost in terms of exchange of funds to a consultant or something like that to prepare the report. No.
No external consultant
Yes.
to prepare the report. All right. Ms. Adams, anything to add?
No, Madam Mayor, but it will be officer time as per our standard replies for council.
Anything further, Councillor Hamer? I've got some questions for this, and I'm happy if it's a joint answer. So given that the officer's response in paragraph 2 indicates an expectation that traffic conditions in this area are likely to be normalised by early 2026, and if I read this right, the town is not proposing that it would begin a traffic management review until after the traffic conditions have normalised, then at what point could we possibly have a report by February 2026 that outlines options for creating a traffic management plan in response to the outcome of the traffic management review if the traffic management review hasn't begun before the normalisation of traffic conditions in early 2026? Ms. Adams?
Thank you. It may be a bit ambitious, but it is still our intention to deliver this within the 25-26 financial year. So having that time after the completion of the metro networks and understanding that, assuming that that's all still staying on time, and that we can complete our review and our assessments to get the designs completed.
I certainly understand that point, but I don't necessarily think you've answered my question. My question is, if the town doesn't begin the traffic management review as per the previous resolution, and the officer's report says that the town's position's unchanged, they don't wish to do the traffic management review until after traffic conditions have normalised, and traffic conditions are not expected to be normalised till early 2026, how will you have had time to do the traffic management review that this particular amendment says bring a report back to council by February next year about options for designing a traffic management plan that is said to be in response to the outcome of the traffic management review, when the outcome of the traffic management review will not be known by early 2026 because it won't appear to have begun? Ms. Adams?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I understand, and that would be a challenge, yes.
Yep, all right, thank you. So in terms of the traffic management review, I think it has been referred to in previous questions that were asked about this after the first resolution in 2022 and then through into 2023. The traffic management review for Carlisle was said to be a significant exercise. Is it still my understanding the town would propose to hire consultants to do that traffic management review, noting that it's a fairly large boundary area that occupies most of Carlisle? Ms. Adams?
Madam Mayor, at this stage, I think it would be a combination, but the actual traffic management review, we undertake much of the data collection wherever possible. And in terms of the impact assessments, depending on the nature and number of that what we do, we may use a combination of external consultants and our own team.
Thank you. So obviously at the moment amendments have been moved and subject to the overall motion receiving the support that it would require, it looks like the cost of doing the traffic management review itself is going to be listed for consideration in the coming 25-26 year budget. So on that basis, if the traffic management review were conducted and then a report was presented to council on the outcome of that traffic management review, is it possible the traffic management review might conclude there's no need for a traffic management plan for Carlisle, that it proposes other ways to deal with things, given that it will be looking at all the treatments we've already put in place, plus the treatments that are expected to be put in place during the 25-26 year, it might conclude that we've reached a point where we're not looking at having a traffic management plan. And I say this because we had a Lathlane traffic management plan that council adopted many years ago, I think Councillor Anderson will recall, that was to take 10 years to deliver, and then the council of the day moved to truncate it to a 5-year plan, and then it got suspended, I think, after its 2nd or 3rd year of operation and didn't get restored. So I'm just trying to get this in hand about what the traffic management plan might be. Ms Adams? I will come to you, Councillor Miles.
Thank you. I think at this stage, Madam Mayor, I would probably stick with our recommendation, which is contained in Officer Comment number 1, which is that we still wish to progress with the review and the traffic management plan. Thank you. Sorry, the review of the traffic management.
All right, thank you. So it's not proceeding with the traffic management plan, it's just do a review of traffic management and then have a report on the review. All right, yeah, I understand that. Councillor Miles.
So this might be a clarifying question for Councillor Cruiser. So my understanding was that you wanted a report outlining the options for engaging facilitating the creation of the plan in response to the outcome, but not necessarily that the traffic management review had been completed. More, you wanted the costings for the process kind of separately, maybe in anticipation of the traffic management review. Was that what you meant, or okay?
To clarify, and taking advantage of the...
So sorry, Councillor Cruiser.
Sorry, Mayor Vernon. Yes, my intent in framing this is that this would give council an understanding of how we can create a truly collaborative traffic management plan that gives space for the residents of Carlisle and other stakeholders in the area, such as business owners, to really talk through what they want from traffic management, what their needs and desires are. My understanding is that that doesn't necessarily, to get the report on how we would do that, obviously to do that we need the data, but to get the report on how we might go about doing that. For example, would it be best to run a series of workshops? Would it be best to engage an organisation that specialises in collaborative place design? That, in my understanding, doesn't necessarily need the data. For us to just know when the time comes, when we have the data, we'll either do this in-house or we'll engage an organisation, or here are the couple of different options for engaging in that in-house. On offer or advice, I put the timing for that in February 2026. My personal opinion is that us getting an understanding of what our options are doesn't necessarily need to wait until February 2026, and so I would be happy to discuss that date and what would work best. But what I would really like is for council to be able to think through and to understand what our options are for how do we include the community and make sure that they really feel engaged and consulted. So I'm very open to either officer advice or advice from the rest of council about the timing of that to ensure it fits within our schedules. But that's what I want to give us the option to do. To not end up with a traffic management plan at some stage that the community again feel they've not been consulted adequately on and they've not been fully engaged with.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Is any other questions or anything anyone wants to raise? Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just on the officer's comment that they refer to the point 1 of the officer's recommendation. So if the officers aren't in support of this motion, they would be in support of just doing the traffic management review and then looking for other options after that in due time. Is that correct?
Well, I'll have to ask the town because obviously the report is written on the motion. It's not written on the amendments, so it obviously has to wait till amendments are moved. Ms Adams, does the town have a position that it supports the proposed amendment by Councillor Cruiser in its present terms?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In relation to our point 1 of the officer's comment, which said that we, won't change or don't. Sorry, let me just rephrase that. We support the review of the traffic management and preparation of the area-wide traffic management plan for Carlisle. So, in relation then to the proposed point 4. To finalise our traffic management review, which would only be completed after the works are done with the metro networks, I think there could be a challenge there with the time. So I think it just may be the order or the intent might need to change.
Okay, so Councillor Hayman, that's the best I suppose we can provide to you in terms of that question. So we've obviously had Councillor Cruiser spoken, Councillor Miles has spoken. Councillor Devereux, are you wanting to speak to the item? You've got a question?
If I can just ask a question in relation to the response that we just heard, is there a preferred date, given the mention of a challenge with the current timing, of what would be a workable timing for the town?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, I think because the date itself is actually due to external factors or at risk from external factors, I'm probably just wondering if the intent is to provide a report that outlines options, outlines costs, if perhaps it could be rephrased so that it's not necessarily in response to the outcome of the traffic management review, but provides enough leeway to perhaps incorporate any outcomes from that at a later date.
Councillor Devereux, anything further?
No, thank you.
All right. Trying to ascertain now, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the proposed amendment? Question, Councillor Hamer.
Question for Councillor Cruiser. Would she be willing to make that amendment that the officers have just raised, but the wording?
Councillor Cruiser.
Yes. Could I seek some advice from both the Chief Operations Officer and the Chief Community Planner about the following wording? Provide a report to Council prior to the creation of a traffic management plan, outlining the options for and costs of, etc.
So, Councillor Cruiser, just so that we have it written down from governance's perspective, you're wanting to add in words that go provide a report prior to the creation of a traffic management plan, outlining the costs of the options for engaging in a collaborative design process that would facilitate the creation of a traffic management plan for Carlisle. Does it still include in response to the outcome of the traffic management review? Or are you able to write out your exact wording? I mean, we can wait for you to do it if you want, because we just need to be clear about what words we're putting in, because the minute secretary will need to start typing it up at some stage. All right, so generally speaking, Councillor Cruiser, the administration prefers to know when they need to bring a report back to council, because it's one way of making sure from a governance perspective that we keep a track of things that the organisation's required to do, so that's one of the problems of taking out the date, but not putting another date in. But I'm just going to go to Ms Adams in case she has some other reflections on what you've said, and then we can go back to you potentially on the date. Ms Adams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just my personal opinion. I think the wording as it is as it was, bringing that report back by February, but removing in response to the outcome of the traffic management review, is sufficient for us to be able to provide that information on costs and options to facilitate that creation of the plan.
Okay, that looks like that's the advice that you're getting back to what you were wanting to do, but I don't know because Councillor Hamer asked you if you were prepared to put in the other one. You're going to need to let me know which you want to do.
Councillor Hamer, what did you want to put in?
I didn't want anything. I was just asking. The officers recommended removing the word in response to, which does make sense. So I think that was the easy fix. Yeah.
So if you're looking to make an amendment to it, Councillor Cruiser, is it just, what's it going to be before I put it to Councillor Miles?
Provide a report to council prior to by February 2026, outlining the options for and costs of engaging in a collaborative place design process that would facilitate the creation of a traffic management plan for Carlisle. Full stop.
Right. Okay. Look, before I'll go to Councillor Miles, I'll just ask you a question myself about this, Councillor Cruiser. So, do I understand then that the intention behind your proposed amendment is that you see that there is a need for a traffic management plan for Carlisle? And just so you understand why I'm asking that question is, it's about what is the purpose of requiring the staff resources to write a report on these options for a process that would facilitate creating a traffic management plan for Carlisle if a traffic management plan for Carlisle is not required.
Point
Councillor
one
Cruiser?
of the officer's recommendation reads, in previous reports, staff reiterated that additional time was needed to prepare an area-wide traffic management plan for Carlisle, which suggests to me that that is required, but if I have misunderstood, I am open to being corrected.
All right, well, I will ask that of Ms Adams because the previous resolutions were not about a traffic management plan, they were about a traffic management review for Carlisle. But I agree, paragraph 1 does refer to time to prepare a traffic management plan.
Thank you,
Ms Adams, which one is it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I appreciate it could have been worded differently. The intent is to do a review of the traffic management throughout Carlisle, but also I do see that we have put in there that we do also need time to prepare an area-wide traffic management plan, but I think that does depend on the outcome of the review.
Okay, so I would go back to you, Councillor Cruiser, and say, could it be that it's provide a report to council following the completion of the traffic management review, outlining the options for and costs of engaging the collaborative place design process that would facilitate the creation of a traffic management plan for Carlisle, if that is the outcome of the traffic management review? Because if the traffic management review doesn't propose a traffic management plan, then we still have plenty of options for engagement with the Carlisle community over lots of things. But if there's no proposal to go to the trouble of creating a traffic management plan, then I'm not sure why we would want a report about how we could do a traffic management plan. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and thank you for your attention to the detail of this amendment. One of my intentions in framing this is because I think that there are several parts of the town where there is this sense of a need for collaboration in how we manage traffic. And my intention in framing this amendment was that it would give us some idea about how to go about that, not only in Carlisle but also elsewhere. However, I am content to reword it along the lines of your suggestions, and then revisit the issue in another area if necessary. So I'm content to reword it to say, could you please repeat your suggestion? Yeah.
Well, I can look to repeat my suggestion, but I am going to follow up with another request from you. How do you, given that this is a very specific thing that you're seeking to achieve, how does this fit within, say, the Integrated Transport Working Group, which I know has only had like maybe 1 or possibly 2 meetings, but if they're doing the work of the Integrated Transport Strategy, is traffic management a part of that group's remit? And if so, is that group not the right place to determine where we go with collaborative place designing processes for traffic management? Like to try and understand what that group would like to see us do. So I'm just worried, is this about a report's being done and the staff basically engage and write a report, or are the staff going to take this to the working group? Would it be better that this issue goes to the working group, gets referred by council to the working group, and out of that the working group might decide to recommend to council that they get the report on it? Like, I'm just trying to look at it, because I know you have raised the issue about the Transport Working Group's involvement previously. Councillor Cruiser.
In my opinion, it would not be best to refer this to the Integrated Transport Working Group, because I'm aware that particularly in Carlisle, we've had a lot of feedback from people who travel primarily by car, or people who might have issues with disabilities that require them to travel by car, who feel that their needs are not being taken account of. When I talk about that collaborative place design process, I do imagine that the Integrated Transport Working Group would be one of the key stakeholders that should be involved in that process. But of course, I want to leave that open to the staff to determine. My intention in framing this amendment was not that we would, for example, come back and say, these are the 6 key stakeholders that we need to make sure we include. It would be to say, what is the overall process? What does that look like in the big picture? How would we go about it? Hopefully in a way that is somewhat replicable in other areas. But that's one of the reasons why I suggested that this needs to be a collaborative place design process for people who live there, for people who feel like they have a stake in Carlisle, and not simply for the Integrated Transport Working Group. Because I think that that would reinforce some people's idea that they've been excluded from important processes of shaping their area.
All right. Going to suggest something else to you for your consideration, and this would be that whilst we have a resolution to conduct a traffic management review in Carlisle, and that doesn't have a completion date as yet, but we're being told that it's going to occur, it sounds like in the 25-26 financial year, and we're putting funds in the budget to do it. What about an addition that is to request the CEO to bring a report to council upon the completion of the Carlisle Traffic Management Review, including the options for and costs of engaging in a collaborative place design process that may facilitate the creation of a traffic management plan. So in other words, we'll get a report on the traffic management review, and part of that will include what you've asked for. So that way, we don't have to worry about putting a date in it, because Ms Adams has indicated she doesn't yet know a date when the traffic management review will be completed. But if the review gets completed and part of the report to council includes the options for doing a collaborative place design process, then if it turns out that's something that is worthwhile, we'll know that we want to go ahead and get one. Is that something that's of interest to you?
That is of interest to me, and I appreciate your suggestion. I'd like to just get that wording up on the screen to confirm, but I would be happy with that. And I also invite any comment from others, including staff who might have feedback.
So it would look like this, and I'll give this over to the Minutes Secretary in a moment, but it would be bring a report to Council upon the completion of the Carlisle Traffic Management Review, outlining the outcomes of the review and including the options for and costs of engaging in a collaborative place design process that would facilitate the creation of a traffic management plan for Carlisle in response to the outcome of the traffic management review. So it's taken most of your words, but it's put in the timing that we get both reports together. And then that hopefully means if the costs of and the options are included, then Council could then immediately proceed after receiving that one report to then determine what they'd like to, for want of a better word, or to be done. So I can pass that over. So it starts there, and then it's to include everything that's in the circle. So maybe it's just those extra words before that instead of that bit. It's that bit. We'll just give the Minutes Secretary a minute or two to bring it up. Councillor Miles, you've got a question?
Yes. So currently it says options for and cost of engaging in a collaborative place design process. So my question is to the staff, if we adopt what I think you've just said, it sounds more to me like we'd be doing the review and then going to the community for their feedback, which sounds less engaging and collaborative than this approach. And so I wanted the town's perspective of whether that would be the case and whether that would be the case.
Well, I can definitely tell you that's not my intention, but I'll go to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. No, that wouldn't be my understanding. The traffic management review is a technical review of how people, whether it's cycling, walking, driving especially, are moving through the area once the conditions are settled after our works, but especially the Metronet works, which gives us a baseline to be able to understand whether there's like the magnitude of the problem, what the actual issue is before engaging in any further work, which would be a collaborative place design process.
So the intention is that the management review, the traffic management review, is not a go out to consultation from the community, see what they think. It's basically review all the interventions we've done, all the interventions that may be identified by traffic data on the different roads and how the traffic flows. And then out of that, the outcome of that review might recommend you need a traffic management plan, or you need 5 more treatments on these roads, or you need to do some other things. And then what Councillor Cruz is proposing kicks in, because if at the same time you get a report that tells you the options and the cost of doing the collaborative design process for a traffic management plan, if you see that at the same time you see the outcome of the traffic management review, then if Council likes what's in the traffic management review and it includes going to the next step, then you already know what the costs are and the options, and then that very meeting, Council can choose to basically approve. One of them will be the option that's chosen to go forward, and that option is about a particular collaborative design process that could be adopted. And that might need its own funding, because it might be you need to get a consultative panel of, a randomised group of 30 people or so, and it's going to cost you $50,000 to do that. Or it might be you just need to go out and hold workshops and surveys and things like that. And some of it might be able to be delivered in-house and some of it might need out-house delivery. So it certainly wasn't my intention that the community would be involved in the traffic management review. I saw that as using our warrant system and all the other technical data that we get. And we may, as Ms Adams said, get some specialists in to help with some of that stuff. Does that make it clearer where I was coming from.
Yep.
Which is why I think Mr. Doy said what he said.
I wasn't quite sure. And just another question about the wording. Is it worth, or is it possible, or is it appropriate to specify, like bring a report to council, talking about timeframes, like whether we say within the 25-26 at the end, before the end of the 25-26 financial year? Would that be, just so that we do have a time frame, would that be achievable?
I guess we can ask Ms Adams if she thinks that if the costing for this gets put into the budget, which is so far the amendment that's going forward, and we get the costs to do the review in the budget, do you see it as likely that once the traffic conditions have settled in early 2026, you can then complete the review and write this kind of report with this extra in it that Councillor Cruz has put forward, so that you'll be doing a report to us by effectively 30 June 2026? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Thanks, Mayor. I do understand, but at this stage, my answer would be yes. We would still aim for that. If that changed, we would come back to council and advise of any, delays and our next anticipated date.
Yep, so one way of dealing with that, Councillor Miles, would be to say bring a report to council no later than 30 June 2026 upon the completion of the Carlisle Traffic Management Review, etc., which would mean if the staff finish it before 30 June, you'd expect them to bring it to council before 30 June. And if it went to 30 June, you'd expect it to be at the last council meeting prior to 30 June. So if people feel that there's a comfort level in putting an end date on it, that probably locks in our argument for putting the costs of it as a list for consideration in the budget. It probably makes it more likely it should get in the budget. Does that help, Councillor Miles?
Yep. Yeah. Are people, the Councillor Cruiser happy?
Go back to Councillor Cruiser. She's obviously just heard all of this, so.
I would be very happy to include the June 30th, 2026 end date there as a way of giving us a definite endpoint for this, which may, circumstances require an extension.
All right, looks like the Minutes Secretary has been efficiently on it and put those extra words in. So I guess now it comes to you, Councillor Cruiser. If you're satisfied with what you see, that's the first step. Same for you, Councillor Miles, since you seconded this proposed amendment. And do other elected members from reading it have any questions?
Just checking with governance, is the last part after the end of the word Carlisle necessary for the meaning, or could we drop that? Just
refer that
for tidiness' sake.
Refer that to Ms Tucker.
Thank you for the question. I think it reads okay the way it is now, but if you think it provides better clarity having those other words removed, then that's up to you.
Might just ask Ms Adams, given that town operational staff will have to be the ones writing the report, thankfully not Ms Tucker. So, Ms Adams?
Madam Mayor, there's a fair bit of going back and forth there, and I'm not sure if it's as succinct and as it could be. I was just going to ask if it's at all possible for council to entertain a maybe 5-minute break just for us to confer and make sure we're all on the same page. Is that a possibility?
It's certainly possible. It has just hit the 8:30 mark, and as per our usual rule, we do have a break at 8:30 for 10 minutes. So if you want to do that, noting that for council to confer as to whether they're comfortable, that'll have to happen in the meeting when it resumes. So happy to move that. We have an adjournment for 10 minutes to get this clarified from 8:31. Seconded Councillor Anderson, thank you. Is there any dissent to the motion to adjourn? No, I'm not seeing any dissents. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. So we're adjourned for 10 minutes. We'll see everyone shortly. Well, thank you everyone for your patience. We have resumed. I'm hoping that matters have been resolved after some discussion. Councillor Cruiser, where are we at?
I think I am currently happy with the wording of the amendment. The advice from staff is that they are content with the wording of the amendment. And Councillor Miles?
I'll go to Councillor Miles. You're happy with the amendment? All right. So, formally now, does any other elected member have any questions that they need to ask about this? No? So, I'm going to formally ask, is there any dissent? No. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Everybody now knows what the final motion as amendment looks like, and I'm going to say this. Do I need to put each of the points of this original motion individually for voting or not? No, no one's saying so. So I'm now going to formally ask, is there any dissent to the original motion as amended? Councillor Hamer, there's dissent. All right. Councillor Hamer to speak against. No?
Just briefly, for the reasons that are quite obvious, this amendment should include a date to remove the speed bumps and not rely on the open-ended expectation of an alternative in the future. So it should be included, and it's not, so I won't be supporting it. Thanks.
All right. So we've had a speaker against. Obviously, the mover and the seconder have spoken. Does anybody wish to speak in favour? Anybody wish to speak at all before we go to the mover to close? No. So as the mover, I'll close. Please vote in favour of the motion as amended. Thank you. Cast your votes. Declare that carried. Those in favour, myself, Mayor Vernon, Councillor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Ife, Councillor Miles, Councillor Cruiser, Councillor Devereux and Councillor Minson. Those against, Councillor Hamer and Councillor Melrosa. So declare it has been carried. Thank you, everyone. I know that that was something that took a lot of time, but it feels like people have got pretty strong views about all of this, and hopefully we will see some positive outcomes for our community going forward. Item 12 is public question time, which I now open at 8:50, but noting there are no members of the public left in the gallery, I'll close it at 8:50 p.m. Item 13 is public statement time, which I open at 8:50 p.m. and close at 8:50 p.m. there being no people in the public gallery. Item 14, meeting closed to the public. We have no such matters. And at 8:50 p.m, I declare the special council meeting closed. Thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to those who joined us on live streaming. Thank you, Councillor Minson. I hope wherever you are, you have a jolly evening left. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you, councillors. Staff, please be upstanding for Her Worship Mayor Karen Vernon.